activities here as well. You're going to start with Portugal, aren't you? There's a lot of soul-searching in the papers there after these devastating forest fires of the last few days.
That's right, Stuart. A lot of questions are being asked in the Portuguese press today after the worst fires in really recent history. Let's take a look at some of the headlines coming out of Portugal today. Communications systems of rescue workers had already failed the country in 2016. That's what Diário de Notícias says on its front page. And this had already hampered communications between firemen and delayed their response time, things that really did, I guess, increase the number of deaths in the fire this year. Faulty communications is something that Público is also focusing on in its front page. They say faulty communications is not something new, and it helps explain the lack of coordination between rescue workers, the political response, and the response of firefighters. The paper focuses on government's failures to update its fire response mechanisms in particular, while Jornal de Notícias, another Portuguese paper, calls it a day of suffocation, with a very powerful photo there in the background that gives you an idea of the intensity of these fires and the desperate attempt by rescue workers to contain them. There are a lot of questions in particular being asked about a major road that was not blocked off. And it was indeed the so-called road of death, where several victims were actually burnt alive in their cars while desperately trying to escape the fire. So a lot of questions. There's actually a really strong opinion piece in the same paper. The writer says, well, who's to blame for this? He says, everyone and everything played a role. You have the crosswinds that fan the flames. You have the dry lightning that supposedly started the fires. But you also have the impotence of politicians, the, quote, sterile laws, the overplanting of eucalyptus trees that increase the intensity of fires. So these devastating fires are the fault of society as a whole.
OK, well, let's move on to something completely different. US, the death of Otto Warmbier, the young American, of course, in North Korean custody, sparking a diplomatic row between the US and Pyongyang.
Well, he was repatriated to the US in a non-responsive state last week, and he sadly died on Monday of his injuries. It's a tragedy that Donald Trump has called a total disgrace, and it's also complicating his relationship with North Korea, in particular his efforts to curb Kim Jong-un's erratic behavior and threats against the U.S. The Washington Post reports that Trump even tried to get China to sort of intervene and gain some leverage on North Korea, but this too didn't appear to work out. And we're seeing that it's affecting, in particular, U.S. tourism to North Korea, because around 800 to 1,000 Americans visit North Korea every year. It's sort of a not dream destination. I guess it's certainly unusual. A destination of curiosity for many people. And in fact, tour groups definitely bank on that. North Korean travel agencies use slick ads to attract American visitors, something that Vox calls travel propaganda, to play up on their curiosity. Well, now there's pressure on the U.S. State Department to issue a wide travel ban on going to North Korea, and also sanction travel agencies who promote this so-called travel propaganda and say that North Korea is indeed a safe country.
Another US story, Democrats losing this closely fought special election in the state of Georgia.
That's right. That special election took place in the 6th district of Georgia to replace Tom Price, who's now part of Donald Trump's cabinet. Now, the Democrats always had a long shot of winning this staunchly Republican seat, but they'd been hoping that this candidate, Jon Ossoff, you see in the New York Times article here, his youth, his charisma might help them win this seat for the first time in 37 years. Well, it wasn't to be, and alas, New York Times writer Frank Bruni says, well, they came up empty-handed and now are left wondering why this anti-Trump passion that we see on the streets, in protests, in marches, in donations, simply can't transform into political power. Indeed, Ossoff's defeat might make it difficult for Democrats to recruit the best candidates in other elections. And it was actually a good day for Donald Trump, because he also won a seat in another special election held in South Carolina. So he definitely won 2 special elections there. So for the moment, as The Independent says, Trump breathes easy. It's been a good day for him.
Okay, well, a little bit earlier on, we were talking about the heat, Stephen and I. And today, 21st of June, does mark the summer solstice here in France. But down under, of course, it's the reverse. We're going to talk about the Australian state of Tasmania. They've traditionally celebrated with a dip in the river there.
That's right, not any ordinary dip. You might not get an idea from this picture here, but it's a nude swim.
Oh, okay.
It's a nude dip in the river, in the Derwent River, that draws a lot of people every year. It's held on a Wednesday, so organizers weren't expecting that many people this year, but there were over 1,000 people who turned up for this nude dip. It's more of a dip than a swim. They sort of plunge into the water and then get out.
That's enough.
The problem is, though, this year they didn't have enough towels for everybody. So those brave enough to jump into the river were left, well, no doubt, bare butt and exposed to the elements.
Or sharing.
Or sharing
One
towels.
or the other. I'm not sure which is worse. Thanks a lot. Too tipsy with the papers on France 24. Just going to bring you